Welcome everyone to the battle between Alireza Firouzja and Fabiano Caruana at the top board of the Triveni Continental Kings taking on Alpine SG Pipers. Fabi is taking on a big challenge here because Firouzja has won every single game that he has played, and Fabi opens with c4, g6, e4, bishop g7, and he builds up this huge center with 3 pawns here. Firouzja goes d6, knight comes out to c3, and pawn to e5, playing in the center of the board. He pushes forward with d5, and very nice move trying to get the knight from a6 to c5. Fabi brings his bishop to d3, knight a6 played. And now the bishop comes out to e3. Firouzja tries to trade off the bishops. Fabi takes, knight takes on h6, and queen d2 attacking the knight here. The knight jumps into g4. He's just trying to relocate the knight. Pawn to h3 played. The knight comes back to f6. And Fabi has space, but if you look at it, he has the worse bishop because it's limited by his own pawns. Queen comes to e7. And now he goes g4, slightly weakening the f4 square. Not that you can take advantage of it right now, but I'm sure Firouzja will find a way to do that. He goes knight d7, a very cool move. And Fabi now castles long. He castles long. He may be hoping to play f4 at some point. The knight jumps to c5, putting pressure on the bishop. The other knight is ready to jump in. Bishop b1 played. And now Firouzja goes bishop to d7. It's time to open up the center. He goes f4. And Firouzja takes. Queen takes f4. If white gets a successful e5, he would be very happy. But Firouzja is not going to allow that. He goes long castle. We have rook f1 putting pressure on the f7 point. And Firouzja, how is he going to defend that? He goes knight b4, a big threat of a check here. For example, if you play queen takes f7, there's knight d3 check, and knight jumps back to e5. So he goes king d2 here, and now Firouzja goes rook f8, queen f6, king d8, ready to go into an endgame. Knight comes up to d4. The position is around equal, but I love how Fabi assesses it in spite of all the positional problems that he has. He still assesses it as fine for him. By the way, if you had brought your other rook here, then maybe h5 and black would have been much better. So rook f2, f6, and now a3, kicking the knight away. The knight goes back, and knight e2 played. Pawn to a4, fixing this weakness. Bishop c2, and he goes bishop e8. But the bishop keeps an eye on the a4 pawn. Knight jumps to f4. He wants to get into the e6 square. And bishop f7 played to take control of the e6 square. Pawn to h4 to go h5 in the future. The knight comes back to d7, and Fabi's advantage rising a bit here. Look at the time on the clock. He has 2 minutes 33 seconds. Firouzja has 4 minutes 53 seconds. Time will play an important role. Chopping off the pawn. Black is now a pawn down, but he's now attacking both the pawns on c4 and g4. So king comes to c3, and he doesn't take it yet. The g4 pawn, he attacks here. Bishop c2, knight takes the pawn on g4. Rook comes to e2. The problem that Firouzja is facing is that Fabi is going to go eventually b4 and start rolling his queenside pawns. He goes rook a1, preparing b4 so that rook takes a3 doesn't fall with a check. Knight comes back to e5. Now a4 first. First a4, then he'll go b4. Pawn comes up, knight to g2. Caruana very accurate in spite of having just 1 minute on the clock. Bishop to h5, attacking the rook. The rook may have to go back. Rook e3 played. And now bg4. Pawn to b4. Knight drops back to d7. Pawn to a5 played. And pawn to c5. Black brings his pawn up and pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. And now a check into the position. Fabi playing so well. Bishop f5, ef. And these two pawns on the queen side look so menacing. He goes h6, trying to keep control. Bishop comes to e4. And b5 is a threat. And Firouzja now takes his time, plays rook at c8, defending the pawn here. So b5 may be possible. He goes rook e1 first. And now d5. Bishop drops back. The game keeps getting more exciting. King d6. Bishop goes back to e2 and c5. Well, that was a very risky move by Firouzja. He's trying to win the game, but in that he's given white two passers now. Rook b8. The passers are not so easy to push. He takes on g5, hg5, rook h1, taking the open file. If black tries to fight for the open file, white's pawns then become even more dangerous. He goes rook e8, trying to enter through the center. Knight e1. And now knight f7, attacking the bishop. If the bishop moves, rook e3 check can come in. Difficult to say what Fabi should do. Where to move his bishop? d3, f3. He goes bishop f3 check. King moves back to b2. And he brings his rook, doubling down the e-file. Firouzja now gives up on the queen side pawns. Bishop d5, the knight jumps in. This is becoming very dangerous. He goes rook a3, offering a trade. Rook e2 check with just 1 second on the clock. g4 pushing ahead. And now rook g1. There's no time for us to analyze. Let's just follow the action very quickly. Then later we'll analyze. Now, oh, look at Firouzja. He moved his rook back and forth. Knight b6, a7. Fabi's making a queen. d3. He goes rook a6. Beautiful move. Knight takes pawn. And we can take the knight. We can also make a queen. He makes a queen. He makes a queen. Rook check. King moves to b1. King e5. He's moving ahead with the king. King d4. Oh my goodness. King a1 played. And knight takes bishop. He takes the rook. Knight d2. Could there be a mate? Oh, Firouzja has a chance to draw. He goes c4, rook a3 played. Knight b3. Oh my goodness. And he finds this queen d6. Incredible defense here. So that the knight cannot move. King has to move. Check. King here. And is that a repetition? No, he finds knight e3. And now queen f4. And he's able to end. Firouzja, so unhappy, almost bangs the table there in disbelief. Check. King c1. And b2 he wants to queen. But now queen takes pawn is winning because check, and you take the rook, and a smile on the face of Firouzja and Fabi. What a game they played. And look at the players in the background. The Alpine SG Pipers have won because of this victory. Anish Giri comes in for his opponent, and look at that. Firouzja is like, what the hell happened? This kind of chess is rare to see at the highest level. Kudos to both Alireza and Fabiano for playing an absolutely stunning game that made the crowds completely stand on the edge of their seats. Alireza was a queen down, but somehow managed to stir up counterplay. We need to analyze that position deeply to understand what happened. Let's have a look.
So with the game points standing 12-8 in favour of Alpine SG Pipers, announced that they are.
The game got really wild here. At this point, black was winning if found the move knight f3, because now the rook has to move and you simply lose a piece. Also, bishop takes f3, g takes f3 is very cool, because let's say if you take here with the rook, I have rook g8 and this is a pin. But this was quite difficult to calculate, and so he played rook h2 with just 1 second on the clock. You saw Firouzja swinging the rook there, a6. Now knight came here, a7. At this point, Fabi is better. He goes d3, and this is a huge blunder by Firouzja, and Fabi finds rook a6, because now the knight is pinned and the pawn is about to queen. It's insane how Firouzja creates counterplay now. Knight takes c4. I guess bishop takes c4 would have been more clean, because then he can take on d3 and it's totally winning. But he decides to make a queen. Rook check, and now you are full queen up because you can't take here. It's pinned, so he brings king up. Now there's a check. Now, okay, you can give a check here on b8, but then the king takes the bishop, so he goes check, king d4. What a practical try it is. King a1 played by Fabi, because he also was down to last few seconds. Knight takes d5. I mean, the bishop could have taken on c4. This was easier and white was winning, but let's see. Takes. He took the rook, knight here. Now there are threats of, like imagine if I play something random like rook a8. It's already game over because I have check and mate. That's already worrisome with just some little time. So he played check here, and now Firouzja could have held a draw with king b3, because threat is knight b3 and rook b2. How do you even stop it is the question. So let's say you play the move rook b1. I go check, you must take, and I take king b3. And now I have a threat here to mate you. Your rook is hanging. Queen g1 and king takes, and this is still insanely complicated. In fact, black is doing quite okay here. Unbelievable line. If king c3 would have been played by Firouzja, that would have been epic. Instead, play c4, rook a3 was played, because again the threat was to give a check. So very good move by Fabi. Check. He now takes it and now finds this only move, because let's just say that you play a move like rook e1. Then here at this moment, rook a2 check, knight c3 and rook c2 mate is happening. So that's the reason why it's very important to pin this knight, and Fabi finds this with queen d6. He goes king c4, check, gains couple of seconds by repeating. Now check on e3. Again here there's a possibility to take on d5 and play knight e3, but okay, this is the cleanest. Takes, and then he figures that there is no perpetual, and final thing is here check, king has to move and white wins. So a very, very intense and complex game.